The salty tang of the sea fills the air as a weathered ship battles towering waves under a storm-darkened sky. Every creak of the timbers echoes human resilience against the relentless ocean's fury. Below deck, sailors endure cramped, humid conditions, their bodies pushed to the limit by hunger, sickness, and the constant threat of disaster. These explorers faced not only the vast unknown, but also the fragile craft of their ships, masterpieces of wood and sweat, built to withstand storms and centuries. Their courage transformed the impossible into the new world, driven by dreams of discovery and survival. It's a story of grit and guts, where human endurance met the savage power of nature. If you're captivated by these daring journeys and want to learn more, hit subscribe to reach 3,000 followers. Tell us where you're watching from and drop a ship emoji if you're with us on this voyage. You can almost taste the salty, briny air that stings your nostrils as you step onto the deck of a colonial vessel. The air is thick with the scent of wet wood, tar, and the faint trace of rotting canvas. The wind cuts like a blade, icy and relentless, and the creaking of the ship's timbers echoes across the open sea. Imagine the constant movement beneath your feet, the sway and tilt that keep you perpetually off balance. It's a place of extreme sensations, where survival hinges on mastery of both craft and courage. Today, we're diving into the gritty, human side of the age of exploration, those daring voyages that reshape the world. Let's start with the ships themselves, the backbone of these expeditions. Colonial ships, like the mighty carracks and smaller caravels, were marvels of their time. Built from towering 2,000-year-old oaks, their hulls had to withstand miles of pounding saltwater and storms. The shipbuilders used meticulous techniques, layering planks with oakum and pitch to seal water out. The process was grueling. Carpenters and rope makers worked with sweat and patience, knowing that one leak could spell disaster. Their goal: create a vessel tough enough to cross oceans, sometimes lasting years. Inside these ships, life was extremely harsh. Imagine a cramped, humid space where the air smells of mold, sweat, and salt. Food was scarce, often spoiled, and the crew faced constant threats from scurvy, dysentery, or pneumonia. The diet: hardtack, dried meat, salty biscuits, lasting but flavorless. Fresh water was limited, and illness spread like wildfire. About 20% of sailors didn't make it home. For many, the voyage became a test of endurance, mental and physical. Hierarchy was strict aboard. At the top, the captain, responsible for every decision. Below, the master, skilled in navigation and ship management. The crew, a mix of seasoned sailors and forced laborers, did the grueling work, adjusting sails, repairing ropes, and fighting storms. The workday, long, relentless, often from dawn until nightfall, with little rest. The routine was brutal but necessary for survival. The sailors relied on rudimentary tools, like the astrolabe, which used the stars to find latitude, and the cross-staff, a simple device that helped measure the angle of celestial bodies. Navigation was an art learned through trial, error, and superstition. But life at sea wasn't just about technical skill, it was about human resilience. Sailors faced freezing cold, sometimes below freezing in the North Atlantic. The ocean's fury could toss ships like toys, and storms could last days, tearing sails and threatening to sink the entire crew. Imagine the horror of a sudden squall, the thunder above, the lightning illuminating the black, roiling sky. Many ships faced shipwrecks or got stranded on uncharted islands, fighting to survive in unfamiliar, hostile environments. The human toll was staggering. Men endured endless days of monotony, punctuated by moments of terror and despair. The psychological strain, unspeakable. Think of the loneliness, the fear of death, the constant threat of mutiny or madness. Disease was rampant. Scurvy, caused by vitamin C deficiency, decimated crews. Remedies were primitive. Lime juice was often the only cure, earning sailors the nickname limeys. Malnutrition combined with damp conditions made infection and death common. Navigation was an evolving science. Early explorers relied on primitive instruments, their mastery of the stars, and dead reckoning, estimating position based on speed and direction. The compass, imported from China, became vital, guiding ships through fog and night. Engineers improved ship design, adding multiple masts and sails, increasing speed and maneuverability. The goal? Reach distant lands, new worlds in one piece. These voyages were more than just exploration. They were human stories of suffering and survival. Each sailor carried hopes and fears, forging a shared resilience. The ships were floating microcosms of human endurance, built from timber, driven by human hands, sustained by their will to survive. Their journeys are a testament to courage, ingenuity, and a relentless desire to discover the unknown at a human cost that's often overlooked. So when you think about the age of exploration, remember, it wasn't just maps and discoveries. It was the indomitable spirit of the sailors, enduring freezing nights, disease, storms, and despair, all to connect distant worlds and forever change history. Imagine the cold, biting wind slicing through your bones, salt spray stinging your face like tiny shards of glass. The deck beneath your feet creaks and groans under the weight of the monstrous ship, a wooden behemoth that's been carved from more than 2,000 trees. The sky is a relentless grey canvas, and the horizon seems to mock you with its endless, unwelcoming stretch. Can you feel that? That's the raw, brutal reality of the age of exploration. Today, we're diving into the maritime world that built empires, but more importantly, transformed human suffering into stories of survival and ingenuity. If you're a fan of history, if you love stories about daring voyages and the human spirit, you're in the right place. But buckle up, because what I'm about to reveal are secrets that made these journeys possible, secrets that revolutionized naval building and saved countless lives. And trust me, they're not what you'd expect. Before we get into it, if you enjoy peeling back the layers of history like I do, hit that like button now. If you're new here, subscribe and activate the notification bell, because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Now picture yourself in the 15th to 18th centuries, a time when the world was a giant puzzle waiting to be assembled. Ships were tiny compared to today's giants, yet they carried the hopes of nations across uncharted waters. These vessels, often frail and vulnerable, carried crews of 50, 100, sometimes more. And mortality was staggering. Up to 20% of sailors never saw land again. Disease, starvation, storms, scurvy, each was a threat more deadly than any pirate. But what made these ships survive the worst? How did they become floating fortresses capable of crossing oceans and uncovering new worlds? That's where the first secret comes in: revolutionary naval construction techniques. Imagine the complexity of building a vessel that could withstand the relentless pounding of stormy seas. The answer was in the wood. Shipbuilders learned to pick specific types of timber, oak, for example, that resisted rot and could flex without breaking. But it wasn't just about choosing the right wood. It was about how you assembled it. The secret: a precise layering of planks fastened tightly with iron nails and reinforced with internal bracing called strakes that prevented the hull from buckling. The use of tree nails, large wooden pegs, allowed the ship to swell and tighten as the wood absorbed water, creating a more watertight seal over time. Cruel, but real. Ships could grow stronger as they battled the sea, and yet they still were vulnerable. The real game changer was the design of the hull. The best ships had a narrow, elongated shape, what sailors called the slender waist, which cut through the water instead of fighting against it. This made a world of difference in speed and stability. But it wasn't only about the ship. No, the human element was just as vital. That's where the second secret comes: the ingenious yet brutal way sailors kept themselves alive aboard these vessels. Imagine what it's like to be confined in a space no bigger than a small house, with dozens of men, some with bloodshot eyes, gums bleeding from scurvy, teeth falling out from vitamin deficiency. The stench, unbearable. Salt, sweat, rotting clothing, and the constant dampness made every breath a gamble. And still they fought on. The crew's survival depended on makeshift remedies and knowledge passed down through generations. One of the most famous and grim secrets was the use of lime to combat scurvy. Early sailors learned that citrus fruits could prevent the disease, but getting that knowledge into practical use wasn't straightforward. They often resorted to sour lemons, limes, or even fermented citrus juices stored in barrels. Imagine the chaos of trying to keep such delicate produce fresh on a rolling, storm-tossed ship. And that's not all. To survive the relentless cold, sailors improvised clothing from scrap fabrics, layered thick wool against the biting wind. They learned to ration their food meticulously, hardtack, salted meat, dried peas, all to stretch the supplies across months at sea. Water. It was a precious commodity. They stored it in wooden casks, which often grew moldy or teeming with larvae, a hidden threat lurking in every sip. But no amount of cleverness could eliminate every danger. The third secret was the art of navigation, an almost mystical knowledge that saved lives. Imagine setting sail without GPS, without radar, without even accurate maps. They relied on the stars, the sun, and rudimentary instruments like the astrolabe and the cross-staff. Yet these tools were imprecise, and cloudy skies often left sailors lost in the dark. The sea was a vast, indifferent monster, ready to swallow ships whole if navigation failed. And that's when it got deadly. Storms could appear out of nowhere, tossing ships like toys. Think about the terror of fighting to keep your vessel afloat, rain hitting your face like an icy slap, waves crashing over the bow, and your crew's voices lost in the howling wind. The ship's timbers would groan and crack, the sails rip apart, and crew members might be swept overboard, their screams drowned by thunder. The cold was a killer on its own, frostbite, hypothermia, cruel but real. But it was not only nature that threatened. Sometimes they weren't alone. Pirates, privateers, hostile ships lurking like predators. Imagine the adrenaline rush, then the chaos, cannons roaring, muskets firing, men fighting for their lives on a floating battlefield. And if a ship was hit, water rushed in and panic set in. Crew members had to plug leaks with whatever they could find, cloth, wood, even their own hands, while praying the storm wouldn't capsize them. Now here's a twist you might not expect. Despite all these horrors, ships were often built by the very men who would sail them, and they used techniques passed down for generations. They understood how to make wood bend without breaking, how to reinforce weak spots, and how to keep the crew alive long enough to reach another land. These secrets, hidden in the knots and nails of their ships, were revolutionary. Easier to say than do, though, because every voyage was a gamble. You could forget your maps, lose your way, run out of supplies, or be caught in a storm that would tear your ship apart. But that's what made these journeys so heroic. Every sailor, every captain was a survivor at heart. They faced the unknown with grit born from necessity. And it wasn't just about exploration. These maritime secrets changed the world, shaped empires, spread ideas, and connected continents. But behind every discovery was a human story. Men and women enduring torment, risking everything, all for the chance to see land again, to change history. If you want to know exactly how they built those ships, or how sailors kept their sanity in the dark, stormy nights, there's a video here on the channel. I've got all that covered. But for now, think about what it took to turn a simple wooden boat into a vessel of empire. Think about the innovations, the sacrifices, because the sea was not just a barrier, it was a crucible that forged the modern world. And every ship that set sail carried not only goods and people, but secrets that changed everything. Let's keep exploring these secrets together. The ocean still whispers its stories, and we're just beginning to listen. Imagine you're on a ship in the 16th century, miles from land. The sky is a dull gray, the wind howling like a beast. The salt stings your eyes. You can feel the rough wood beneath your hands. Every knot, every plank, a tiny miracle of craftsmanship. But beneath that sturdy surface, trouble brews. The voyage is a brutal test of human ingenuity, resilience, and improvisation. There's no GPS or satellite to guide you, just your skills, your luck, and the secrets passed down through generations of shipbuilders and sailors. Let's step into the shoes of those sailors. Because behind every voyage was a series of harrowing problems, each one worse than the last, and everyone had a clever, sometimes desperate solution. And trust me, these solutions changed history. First, picture this. The ship's hull begins to leak. Not just a trickle, but a gushing crack from a collision or a rotten plank. Without modern sealants or epoxy, what did they do? Well, they got creative. They'd fill the gap with oakum, soaked in tar, packed tight like a wound. Imagine the sound of sticky fiber tearing as it was forced into the crack, then coated with hot pitch to seal it. It was messy, but effective. Sometimes sailors would even plug leaks with wool, then cover it with layers of tarred cloth. This improvisation brought days or hours more afloat. But it wasn't just leaks. Saltwater corroded the wood, especially in the humid tropics. The timber would rot away, vulnerable to the relentless assault of the sea. And let's not forget, the wood was often sourced from just a few types of trees, like oak, pine, or cedar, each with its own vulnerabilities. The trick was selecting the right wood, seasoned properly. They'd spend years drying the timber, sometimes over 100 days, so it wouldn't warp or crack when put under stress. Think about how they had to estimate the moisture content, often by cracking the wood or checking for shrinkage. No moisture meter here, just experience and instinct. Now imagine a sailor like Miguel, a seasoned crew member. One day during a storm, a massive wave crashes over the bow, smashing a section of the hull. The ship begins to take in water faster than the crew can bail out. Panic sets in, but not all hope is lost. They'd have quick fixes, a patch of canvas or sailcloth, soaked in pitch and pressed against the hull with heavy timbers or shovels. It's a temporary patch, just enough to keep them from sinking until calmer waters or rescue. And here's where the human element shines. Sailors had to be inventors, engineers, and doctors all in one. When a crew member's gums bled from scurvy, they'd chew on fresh lemon or pickled limes, an early form of vitamin C supplementation. But more often, sailors were weakened by malnutrition, vitamin deficiencies, and the psychological toll of endless ocean. Imagine Tomas, a young sailor, trembling from cold and exhaustion after weeks at sea. His teeth are loose, gums bleeding. He's losing hope. Yet he keeps working, driven by the need to survive. Now think about storms. The wind could reach 60 miles per hour. The rain cold and cutting as shards of water batter the deck. Lightning strikes could set the ship ablaze. To prevent fires, sailors stored gunpowder far from the galley. They also used metal fittings, rusted and brittle, a constant worry. When the ship creaked and groaned under stress, it felt alive, a monster fighting to survive. The crew's senses sharpened, the scream of the wind, the slap of rain, the creak of the timbers. The second major problem, maintaining the ship's structure over months or years at sea. Wood shrinks, swells and warps. Nails loosen. The ship's integrity is compromised. They had to tighten every bolt, replace rotten planks, and occasionally even replace entire sections of the hull, sometimes using up to 2,000 planks alone in a large vessel. To reinforce weak spots, sailors would insert oakum-packed seams hammered tight with wooden mallets. They used copper nails or bolts, an innovation that helped prevent rust and decay, although copper was scarce and expensive. Still, this gave ships a fighting chance to last through long journeys. But it wasn't just the physical challenges. The crew faced psychological torment. Imagine being hundreds of miles from home in the dark, with the constant threat of mutiny, disease, or sinking. Food was scarce, fresh water ran out, and scurvy was a constant threat. They'd create makeshift salt ration bread, sometimes with worms or mold, survivors of moldy biscuits or hardtack as they called it. When fresh supplies ran out, they'd catch fish, gather rainwater, or even drink brine, which made their thirst worse. Every day was a battle against hunger, dehydration, and despair. And yet, the sailors' ingenuity kept them alive. They devised techniques like drying and salting meat and fish for long voyages. They used their knowledge of stars for navigation. No GPS, just the sun, the moon, and the constellations. They kept watch for other ships, storms, or whale blubber floating in the water, which could be used for oil or fuel. They even improvised medicines from plants, herbs, and animal parts, some effective, others just hopeful guesses. But perhaps the most astonishing thing, the building of the ships themselves. These vessels were marvels of craftsmanship, crafted by men who knew the sea intimately. They used about 20% of the available timber in each ship for the hull alone. Each ship could weigh thousands of tons, with the largest ships capable of carrying hundreds of men and cargo. The process took years, sometimes up to 5, to complete, and the crew often had a hand in building her. Imagine the apprentice shipwrights learning to bend and shape wood, using steam from the wind and manual labor to make the planks conform. And don't forget the human toll. The construction was brutal. Long hours, heavy lifting, dangerous tools. Many sailors were injured or died from accidents. Yet their craftsmanship was precise. They relied on techniques like scarf joints, overlapping planks glued and nailed together to make the hull stronger. They used caulking made of oakum and pitch to seal every seam, every crack. Every nail, every beam was a piece of their collective story, testaments to perseverance and innovation. But no matter how well built, ships faced threats from within and without. Disease spread fast, typhus, dysentery, scurvy, killing many. Sometimes ships had to be abandoned, left to rot at the shore after a voyage. They were like floating tombs sometimes, haunted by memories of those lost at sea. So what's the takeaway? These problems, leaks, rot, storms, crew health, were relentless. But the solutions were even more impressive. They combined practical know-how, resourcefulness, and sheer guts. These ships weren't just boats. They were mobile laboratories of human resilience, built to conquer the ocean's fury and expand empires. And that's why the secret behind the age of exploration wasn't just in maps or guns. It was in the ingenuity, the tiny innovations, the improvisations, the human stories of survival. Because every patch, every nail, and every sailor's grit helped change the world. If you want to know the exact techniques they used, the materials they employed, or the stories of the men and women who endured it all, there's a detailed video on this channel. But for now, just imagine what it took to turn raw wood and human effort into the ships that shaped history. The sea was a brutal teacher, and only the most inventive survived. And every ship, every voyage, carried secrets that still echo across the centuries. Imagine yourself standing on the deck of a ship hundreds of years ago. The salty air bites at your skin. The wind screams like a banshee through the rigging. You feel the creak of the wooden planks beneath your feet, each one a tiny miracle of craftsmanship. But what you don't see is the chaos inside those walls, inside the hull, where ingenuity, resilience, and sheer guts held the line against the treacherous ocean. Today, I want to take you beyond maps and compass roses. We're diving into the 6 secrets that revolutionized naval construction during the age of exploration. Secrets that transformed raw timber into ships capable of crossing entire oceans. Secrets that, believe it or not, still echo in the ships we sail today. First, you gotta understand what these ships faced. The ocean was a monster, cruel, unpredictable, deadly. Storms could shred a vessel like paper. Leaks weren't just annoying, they were death traps. Marine rot, salt, and time would weaken the wood, turn it brittle. And the crew, they weren't just sailors, they were survivors, braving disease, scurvy, starvation, madness. Every voyage was a gamble with life itself. Now, among all this chaos, the builders had secrets, techniques so vital that they changed everything. Let's start with the first, the precise shaping of the hull using scarf joints. Imagine two planks of wood, each cut at a specific angle and glued together over overlapping regions. It's like a handshake, stronger than nails alone. The skill, it was mind-blowing. They relied on craftsmen who knew how to make these joints seamless, almost invisible. This method ensured the hull could take pounding after pounding without cracking apart. It was a tiny detail, but it kept ships afloat longer, saved lives, and let explorers reach distant shores. But a solid hull wasn't enough. The second secret was caulking techniques, the art of sealing every crack, every seam. They used oakum, fibers of tarred hemp, and pitch melted and sticky as molasses. They packed these into seams with a mallet, then hammered on more until the gaps vanished. The smell was acrid, a mix of tar and salt. The process was arduous, often performed in cold, damp conditions, with hands trembling from cold and fatigue. Yet this sealing turned fragile planks into watertight armor. No leaks, no sinking, at least not immediately. But here's where it gets shocking. The third secret involved the materials and their preparation. Think about it. Timber was the backbone. Not just any wood, but up to 2,000 trees per ship, carefully selected and seasoned. They used oak, resilient, dense, tough. But seasoning was crucial. It meant drying the wood for years, sometimes decades. Otherwise, the wood would warp, crack, or rot faster. This was no casual process. It was meticulous, almost sacred, ensuring each plank could withstand the relentless assault of salt, storms, and fatigue. And yet, even the best materials and construction techniques couldn't prevent the inevitable. The fourth secret, the strategic placement of reinforcements. Think of iron bolts and nails, up to 1,000 per ship, used not just for fastening, but to distribute stress evenly. The masters knew that a weak point could doom the entire vessel. So they reinforced corners, gunnels, and the keel. They used copper sheathing later on to prevent marine growth, barnacles, worms that could weaken the hull from the outside. This was a game changer, prolonging the ship's life and reducing maintenance costs. But nothing prepared the sailors for what came from within, the deadly enemy of the crew, disease. The fifth secret isn't just about the ship, but how it was built to survive the torment inside. Imagine what it was like, crowded, damp, stifling. Sunlight barely filtered through the deck hatches. Germs spread like wildfire, typhus, dysentery, scurvy. The ships themselves became floating prisons. The secret, designing spaces for better ventilation and drainage. Small portholes, adjustable vents, and drainage channels helped reduce humidity and keep water from pooling. Still, it was a constant battle. Often the ship's design was a matter of life or death. Now, no secret was more vital or more shocking than the sixth, the human factor, crew resilience and improvisation. Because no matter how advanced the ship, sailors faced constant threats. During storms, they'd lash the masts, reinforce the decks. When storms damaged the hull, they'd patch leaks with rags, clay, or even their own clothes. Imagine a sailor's trembling hands, scraping and sealing, knowing one mistake could be fatal. Many men endured injuries, gingivas bleeding, teeth falling out from scurvy, limbs broken in storms. The psychological toll was immense. They were not just building ships, they were building resilience, grit, and survival instincts that would define generations. And here's where it gets emotional. These sailors, these shipbuilders, most of them anonymous, faced horrors that today we can hardly imagine. Their sacrifices were staggering. Think about the relentless cold, the constant threat of sinking, the loneliness of the open sea, and the despair of losing comrades. Yet they kept going. They transformed raw timber into vessels of discovery, empires, and cultural exchange. Their work was a testament to human courage, an act of defiance against the chaos of nature. Today, we enjoy the safety of modern ships with steel hulls, GPS, life rafts, and advanced navigation. We forget how much blood, sweat, and ingenuity went into those early ships. They were fragile, dangerous, and often deadly, but they carried dreams of exploration, conquest, connection. So what's the big takeaway? These secrets, hidden in the details, are what made the age of exploration possible. Without them, the New World might have remained undiscovered, the oceans unconquered. The silent courage of those sailors, patching leaks under stormy skies, fighting disease, and building ships that could face the fury of the sea, they changed the world. And as I stand here, imagining those brave souls, I can't help but feel grateful for the ease we have today. We protect ourselves with steel, technology, and comfort. But we owe a debt to those anonymous builders and sailors, those who sacrificed everything so that we could know what lies beyond the horizon. Their legacy isn't just in the ships they built, but in the human spirit they exemplified, resisting, enduring, daring. If you want to dive even deeper into the craft, the materials, or the stories of survival that define this era, check out the detailed videos on this channel. Because understanding these secrets isn't just about ships, it's about recognizing the resilience that makes us human. Next time you see a modern vessel gliding effortlessly across the water, think of the raw, brutal, and brilliant work that made that possible. Think of those sailors' courage, their sacrifices, and carry that inspiration with you. Because history's greatest journeys aren't just about discovery, they're about the human spirit thriving against all odds. And that spirit, my friend, still sails today.